You're listening to Four Nations, Four Voices, set up by Amplifying Accessibility and supported by Newport City Radio. Hello, we are here at episode 2, and I have the lovely Maddie here. How are you doing, Maddie?
Yeah, really good. I'm really excited. This is really cool to be part of.
Where are you calling in from today?
I'm calling in from sunny, very sunny, in fact, it's a heat wave, Leeds, in the UK.
Have you always been from Leeds?
No, I grew up in Bedfordshire, which is in the south, and then I moved to Leeds when I was 18 for uni, and then just stayed here.
What's the music scene like in Leeds?
It's good. I feel like there's loads of stuff to do. There's loads of really nice, cool grassroots like stuff that's set up by artists. Loads of like collectives and stuff. I really noticed it because where I grew up was like quite a sleepy town in quite a rural area. And I came here when I was 18 and I was like, oh, I could see music every night of the week. And that was like amazing. Like that sort of switch from kind of having nothing to having loads, but also that because so much is set up by artists, so much is set up by students, that there wasn't a huge like financial barrier to see things. Like really cool for that. And there's also challenges that there's always so much competition as well, which I've kind of noticed more as an artist, but kind of in a nice way. Like it's that thing of there's always stuff to go and do, which I love.
Oh, it sounds like a really vibrant music scene and like a nice grassroots music scene as well,
Yeah.
quite community orientated.
Yeah, and because I went to Leeds College of Music, which is now Leeds Conservatoire, and because it's a big course and it's a big part of the city, there's loads of really interesting like genre stuff. So it's not loads of the same genre of music, which I think was really cool, especially for me as sort of like starting out and kind of working out what kind of music I wanted to make. That was really amazing.
Tell me about that music journey because like I've been listening to your tracks this morning, mid crying, mid joy, and everything in between. How did music enter your life?
I've always like sung. I was a big singer and I'm autistic, so I was very hyper focused on um Joseph the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat as a 2 year old. That's what I always think back to. And so my mum tells me that when I was 2, I could recite the whole thing, I guess in a very autistic way. So I was always really like deeply sort of hyper focused on music as a really young kid. And then I guess kind of like explored writing and singing and stuff. I think writing for me became like a way to regulate. I think as an autistic person, I really historically and actually now sometimes really struggle with processing and understanding communication, and like I think songwriting was this like really beautiful way to like be able to just like step back and reflect and work out how I felt about things where there was no kind of right or wrong, and whereas in like conversations with people there definitely are right and wrongs, and so
Mm.
that was really challenging, but I never kind of planned it to be a job. It was always like this is something I love to do, and then I just got lucky, I think.
Was there like a moment that you were like it clicked and was like, right, this is my career?
And my mum is such a like big advocate of mine. And I remember I was planning on going to uni and studying education because that felt like what I should study. And I remember she tricked she tricked me into coming to Leeds and told me we were doing a day out to Leeds. And she'd booked me on an open day at the College of Music. And I remember turning up and being like, oh my gosh, I want to do this. This is what I want to do. Why did I feel like I wasn't allowed? And so I started doing my degree kind of thinking, well, I'm gonna have 3 years to do music and just like love it and explore it. And then once I finish my degree, I will study to be a teacher. I'll do a postgrad and get a real job. I never kind of thought this would be my job because it just didn't feel like a reality. And then when I was studying in my second year, I applied for the Young Folk Award. Everyone applied for it. I'd applied for it a few times before, kind of expecting nothing to come from it. And I won, which was like mad. And I remember that day after winning. And I actually think I remember my main tutor, her husband, saying, this is your life is changed now. Like this
Wow.
this is your job now. And I remember that being a real switching point from like, this is something I love to do and I enjoy doing, to like, oh, actually, maybe this could be something I actually do. Like maybe this could be my career. And I think I almost needed that like external validation. I definitely did, to be like, oh, actually, this is I'm maybe good at this. And I think that was the point where it shifted for me. And I was like, oh, maybe I do get to give this a go and see what happens.
What was it like after having the Young Folk Awards? How did things change?
It genuinely, it felt like overnight I went from this person who kind of wanted to do music to a musician. I think the folk scene is like this really beautiful, like I mean, and it has its cons as well. But it's this very sort of beautiful community of people who just love this very niche thing, I guess. But yeah, overnight I had people ordering this record that I'd recorded when I was like 16, and people following me and people chatting to me on Insta, loads of gig offers. And one of the things that you get as part of the award is that you get booked to play at Cropredy Festival, Cambridge Festival, and Towersey Festival. I'd never played a festival before. I'd never even really been to a festival because I'd never had the funds. So, like, again, overnight was like all these opportunities and was able to build this like little fan base or a little group of people who really cared about what I was doing. I think it was just a real shift. And that was at the time what I needed. It was also quite weird and quite like a big change. And I think that took me a little bit of time as well. And then also that happened in 2019 and then it was COVID. So it was really hard to go from, oh my gosh, everything's happening to everything's not happening. And that was really weird and kind of challenging. But yeah, it was so cool. And like they don't have the young folk anymore. They lost the funding for it the year after, just after I'd won, which I think is such a shame because I think it was such an important thing for like early career musicians to be able to get that thing that means that people are interested. I don't know how to describe it, but yeah.
You are on Four Nations, Four Voices, and you are the representation of England. You are the country of England currently. What would you say is a real strong point of making music in England?
I think it's a weird question because I have a complex relationship with Englishness. Like when you ask about England, I think of the like flags on the side of people's houses, and I feel a bit like, oh, so I kind of had to acknowledge that. I think the English folk music scene is really cool. What I've always loved about it is it's lots of like people who love folk music making things happen. So like even when you're like at the top of your career, you're going to folk clubs set up by a guy who asked his local pub if he could book a room and set up a folk club. And I think that's really cool. I think the way that the tradition exists and is created is really cool. And I love that.
Then maybe moving to the other side, what do you think could strengthen within England's music scene?
Definitely accessibility is a real issue, I think, across all of the music industry. I think in this kind of niche that I work in, the folk scene is again set up by a lot of really well-meaning people, but there is so many physical barriers to venues, and there's a really cool project called Access Folk that's exploring at the moment kind of how to challenge that and how to make that better. So I think access is a big issue and one that I notice a lot, and I'm very sort of cautious of as a touring artist, not just in terms of myself as going to gigs, but kind of aware of like trying to work in a system that maybe doesn't always understand access, that doesn't always prioritize access, and working out what I can do, but also kind of like how to have those conversations without making people feel really kind of like backs up. I think that's a big challenge that I notice. Yeah.
Has that always been something you've been quite like forthcoming with and saying like this needs to change or talking about access because for some people it's quite oh, I'm a bit nervous to talk about it.
Yeah, I don't think I did for a long time. In fact, I think when I started working as a musician, I made quite an active decision that I wasn't going to talk about being disabled because I didn't think I was allowed. There's like rules like if someone's eating a meal, you're not allowed to talk about being sick, things like that. I kind of felt like it was that. It was like you just don't talk about being disabled in the music. And I think that was because I'd never really seen anyone do that. And so I didn't know I was allowed to. And also because I struggle with the way that a lot of people interact with you once they know that you have a disability, like that kind of like, the face, like the, oh, like, oh, you're doing really well. I just find that really difficult. But then I was selected for a mentoring program with the English Folk Expo, and was mentored by O'Hooley and Tito, who were these incredible like folk musicians who are both autistic. They really like worked with me on like why is that? Why can't you do that? And like, if is that a choice that you're making about not talking about being disabled because you you want to have that separation, or is it because you feel like you're not allowed to? And it was very much a feel like I'm not allowed to thing. And so I think from that I started talking about being disabled. I started kind of explaining the a lot of songs I'd written, I'd kind of find easy ways to explain that weren't like, oh, I wrote this about being autistic and how it's really hard to understand what this person's saying. And kind of through that kind of was starting to feel more able to talk about being autistic and being neurodivergent. And then from that, once I was talking about that, I noticed that loads of my audience were talking to me about their neurodivergence and their disabilities. And because of that, I was suddenly hearing what it was like on the other side of the gigs and was like, oh, actually, I don't want my gigs to be a place where if I was attending them, I wouldn't be able to access it. That's mad. But
Mm.
also, I feel like as a musician, you're in a super privileged position where people listen to you. And I was suddenly like, I feel finally I feel able and confident enough to talk about this stuff. And then naturally, I think I started talking a lot more about access and thinking a lot more about access because of that. It's quite a long-winded answer, but yeah, bit of a
No,
journey with that one.
you've hit another point that Waters from Scotland, who was in episode one, sort of mentioned as well that when he describes talking about getting more comfortable talking about access within the music sector, he says that he met a mentor who was also disabled. And it seems to be the thing that, and
Yeah.
an important reason why we need like not always representation, but to have people that are similar to us to go, it's okay. I remember performing at a school once, and the teachers were telling one of the kids off because they kept like squirming all the time, and I instantly went, my fellow ADHD
Yeah.
kid, like this is me. And I chatted to him afterwards, and I was like, your teachers are going to tell you off a lot. I used to have it, and I was like, but look what you can do in the future, you know.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you're really creating that safe space, and it sounds like quite a you have like quite a personal connection with your fan base as well. Is that the case?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think because a lot of my music is really personal. It's really about me that people are really honest about their lives, and that's like a again a real privilege. But I love that. I think it's one of my favorite things about being a musician is being able to talk to people and understand people's lives and reflect on my own life. I think it's just like the coolest thing. And I meet so many like really interesting people that I wouldn't know otherwise. And that's like, again, it's so cool and like such a privilege, I think.
Let's chat about your creative process because you said that music helps you process things, being a neurodivergent person. So does it always sort of start with like an experience and then you it turns into music, or is there another way that you approach music making as well?
I think it really depends. I think it really varies and it changes depending on like what period of my life I'm in. Usually I think I I feel like when I'm writing stuff, it depends if it's more like traditional or more original. So if it's traditional stuff, it's usually that I have done lots of research or I've been on like quite like an intense hyper focus into a particular artist or a particular instrument or a particular like focus on collector. I usually want to do a version of a song that says something different. One of the things that's tricky about doing trad music is that there isn't a whole lot of representation of like queer people or trans people or different. It's very boy meets girl. Either they get happily married or one of them dies is kind of how most of the songs I listen to feel like. And that's great. But I love like kind of rewriting that or writing a little bit of my life or my experience into that. So that's kind of my approach when I'm writing trad stuff. I think with my own writing, it usually I just kind of am like, I'm gonna try and write something and I just sit with my guitar and just see what happens. Occasionally I kind of go into things being like, oh, I'm gonna write this. But usually I think it's just like just see what comes out. And usually there's something that has I've been trying to process internally or understand internally, and then I write the song and I'm like, oh, I'm clearly really thinking about that at the moment, or like, oh, that's clearly a lot, in my head a lot. But it's kind of one of these like really safe things I think for me as an autistic person again, because there's no right or wrong with songwriting. It's just what you do, and like you don't know what the outcome is, but that feels quite safe. And I really, yeah, I love it. It's like my favorite thing. to do, which is good because I'm doing it for a job now, so that's nice.
I feel like so much of the neurodivergent community, like as someone part of it and having peers within the music scene the same, that social situations are a nightmare, but like give some music and it's the most beautiful storytelling, artistic piece in the, and everything makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Like everything clicks, and not just I feel like to our neurodivergent community, but to everybody. It's like it's the language of the community to have this music.
Yeah, and I feel like what I love as well is that I think there's something really I do lots of like community work and like workshops and stuff. And I did a project recently with like young trans people in Doncaster where we were looking at the idea of trans safety. And in the first session, it was really tricky because the idea of thinking about safety in an area and in a period of their life where most of the young people didn't feel safe wasn't possible. And so we we kind of reflected on that. And then the next session we did a session on like myths and mythology and all these massive themes about safety and about the young people's lives and their experiences were so much easier to explore when it wasn't about them and it was about these other things, these other stories, these other archetypes. And I really noticed that I think in my own writing and I think there's a real like beauty in being able to explore like a feeling or an emotion or a process, but be like, this isn't about me, this is about this other thing. And then afterwards reflecting. And I've had it before, like I wrote a song on my first record called Icarus, and it was before I was out as trans. And I remember being like, this is a little bit about being trans, but no one's gonna know. It's like top secret. And I'd tell a story about it being about just about Icarus. And then I remember the first gig I played it live, someone coming up to me and being like, I love that you made Icarus trans, and me being like, what? What do you mean? That's not what I did. So I think there is also that kind of thing where actually sometimes you think things are quite hidden, but it's actually quite transparent. But I love that, and I love that about the community, and I love that about having loads of my audience are also neurodivergent and autistic, and that beauty of like talking to people and the kind of authentic conversations between neurodivergent people is just like such a joy.
I love that. And I'm laughing as well because a friend of mine also wrote about Icarus as a secret coming out song. I'm like, is this a theme? Are we, is
Yeah,
this?
it must be. What is it about Icarus where we're like, oh yeah, he'll cover it up for me?
Yeah. But maybe we're all like, Icarus is actually part of the LGBT community, like
He definitely is.
secretly.
Oh,
Yeah.
without a doubt. Yeah, he knows. He knows.
Do you find that being disabled or trans or like intersectional in that way has an influence on the music that you make?
Yeah, definitely. I think without a doubt, in my experience, and I know this isn't the experience for all trans people or disabled people, but like for me, those things affect every aspect of my life, like going to the shops. I am walking around the world looking like a trans person, and I'm walking around the world with ear defenders on because I am overwhelmed and overstimulated all the time. I think because it affects what feels like every aspect of my life in a lot of ways. It definitely affects the music that I'm writing and it affects, yeah, the kind of my internal world. So I think it does. And I think also like when big things happen, as a kind of political songwriter, I want to respond to it. So I released a record in November, which was responding to the Supreme Court ruling that changed access to single-sex spaces. And it wasn't that I set out to write the record, it was that I was really frightened and really anxious about this big change that was going to affect me and my friends in a really profound way. And so every time I went to sit down to write music, it was just about it. So I feel like it definitely affects the stuff that I write. And I think that it's important, but also it feels like a lot of the time when I'm writing stuff, I'm thinking, well, what was it? What did I need to hear as a 16-year-old? Like what would have it helped? What would have been important for me to be able to see someone else write? Or what would I like to see people writing now? What would make me feel like I am part of something or that I'm not on my own? And then that kind of becomes what I write about sometimes, I think.
I'd love to know as well, because you mentioned sort of younger you and what you need here. Who were the sort of artists around you, or you know, whether famous or local, that were really like speaking to you when you were younger and really inspired you?
I was super hyper fixated on artists. I feel like there's a few people that I feel like I was deeply obsessed with and studied everything they did. So I always think of Annie DeFranco was like I remember I came across her when um I was like maybe like 13 even. And I remember I remember Googling um musicians who are also gay, and her being on a list, and then it was loads of people that I didn't know, and they were all really like poppy and stuff. And then I remember hearing one of her songs and being like, okay, this is it, this is the one. And then I remember her watching all these interviews. I'd spend hours on like YouTube watching and listening to things that she said, and she was this like incredible like personal political songwriter and like this massive feminist. And then I remember in an interview her being like, oh, I'm a folk singer, and being like, okay, well, I'll do that then. That's what I want to do. I want to do folk music. And then because she said she was a folk musician, being like, okay, I'm gonna listen to some folk music, and then suddenly being like, whoa, this is really cool. So getting really into it from that. So she was a huge kind of influence. And then like a lot of the like I guess the big sort of folky names, like people like Joni Mitchell and Anais
Mm.
Mitchell, kind of like self-reflective artists. And then I think I got super into the folk scene, and as kind of like an older teenager, I guess, listening to a lot of trad music, listening to people like Tito and O'Hooley, who then became my mentors, which was incredible, and lots of like was super into like really like feminist, personal political music, and listened to lots of that. So people like Nancy Kerr, but definitely the hyperfixation on Annie DeFranco was probably, I think, why I'm here now. It was an intense one.
Shout out Annie.
Yeah, honestly, what a gal.
Is there anyone within your music scene right now in England that, well, obviously you're not all of England, in Leeds, that you think deserves more hype, that you're like, this person is doing awesome things and they should be recognized for that?
Yeah, the person that comes to mind is Satnam Galasan, who is this incredible feminist. She's a Punjabi folk singer, and she rewrites traditional Punjabi folk songs to be about her experience as a gender-based violence survivor. And honestly, I have never been to one of her gigs without sobbing. But also, like, her musicianship is absolutely unreal. And she's based in Leeds, and is I've learned so much from her. We've done a few projects together, and yeah, she's definitely the person that comes to mind as like, I wish every time anyone asks me who do you listen to, I'm always like, Satnam. She's just, yeah, absolutely incredible.
I love a gig to cry to as well.
Oh,
Like,
I love a gig sob. Yeah, I really need it. There's something really human about it, isn't there?
it's so cathartic, isn't it? And
Yeah.
I find it also, I don't know if you get this, I sometimes find it a bit odd as an artist, in a nice way, but also when you've like written about something so personal and then someone in the audience like takes it as their own, as if you've written about their life. And it's always
Yeah.
like, no, no, this was me. This is, but you
I
have
lived.
experienced.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's weird, and like, and it's interesting hearing people's like personal connections to songs, and then sometimes it's so different to what you wrote about it, and then you're like, oh, okay, that's really it sometimes, yeah, it takes a moment, doesn't it?
Yeah, I had an artist on Newport City Radio not long ago called Emmy Sarah, and she's
Mm.
only 16, 17 years old. Really, really talented. And we were breaking down her song Ghosts, and I was like, oh my gosh, the metaphors of like singing about he's putting boxes in my attic and moving them around, about like sort of passing over his sort of past. And Emmy turned around and go, no, it's literally about a poltergeist moving boxes in the attic. And I'm like, they're like, no, 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 no.
No.
This is really heartbreaking. And she's like, no, it's literally if there was a poltergeist, like Ghostbusters kind of song. And like you said, that way you make this art and give it to the world, and whatever they perceive, they perceive.
Yeah, it's a weird one. I've definitely done that before, and then people have explained what things are about, and I'm like, no, no, I don't think that's right, actually. It's so funny, isn't it?
And you have a really incredible storytelling trait to your music. Of course, being from sort of folk, I was listening to Dear Landlord and the small samples that are along the way and how it's sort of like letter format as well. How did you develop this song?
So I wrote it because I wanted to make a video about it on my Instagram and tag my landlord and get loads of people to message him, because I had all these issues in my flat. It was a very like practical, like, this is going to fix it. Anyway, he doesn't have social media, and nor does the company he works for. They've clearly had folk musicians who have rented their properties before, I reckon. And so I'd written this song, and it was kind of, I think it was part of the Joy and Resistance record. So all the songs were really about like I want the world to be better, and I want things to be different, and this is what the world feels like, and I just want things to be different. And along that process, I was kind of thinking like, if we all had like our needs met, I think the world would be so different. And I was thinking like, there is literally this physical barrier that every time I go into my bathroom, there's like 100 rats sort of running around. That is a barrier because I can't think about anything else because all I can think about is how am I going to get the rats out my bathroom and how am I going to get my landlord to actually fix it. It is fixed now for the record. But I think when I started writing the song, I was like, I'm going to use this to get and sort it. But as I was writing it, as I was kind of like, actually, we don't talk enough, I think, in political spaces about like the physical barriers to making the world better and like how
Mm.
different things would look if we didn't have this. Almost think of it like a wall and each brick is a different thing. And maybe that's like, I mean, and sometimes it's access and sometimes it's like, you know, a heat wave and all these things that stop people from being able to do the kind of activism that they want to do. And then with the sounds, I remember I worked with Alex Garden, who they're this incredible like producer, and I kind of was like, I see things as an autistic person, like super literally. Like if I'm like, it's all very like that song is basically a list of real things that were happening, and it's a very kind of autistic thing for me. And I was suddenly like, I want this to sound how I imagine it in my head. I want to like put people in my house. And so then we found all these sounds and we recorded a bunch of them and we found loads online and we made them. And it was like this really fun experience of being like, oh, I'm actually going to make this a real thing, which was really fun.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's so immersive because I started off listening to Stories I'd Never Tell and then into Dear Landlord. And although Dear Landlord is political in essence, it's also fun and
Yeah.
like a jolly like transition. And you take us on such a journey. Was there a sort of structure in head of like I want this emotional journey, or is it like I really like these songs and I just want them together?
I think both. I think I'm super aware that a lot of the stuff that I sing about is really intense and heavy. And I've kind of made a lot of peace with that because that's just the artist that I am, right? But I think yeah, I think a lot about like light and shade and like when I'm writing set lists and doing live gigs, I'm like, I can't do like 5 songs in a row that are like gonna make people sob. Do you know what I mean? Like I don't want
Yes,
anyone
you
getting
can.
dehydrated. I
Let
definitely
them
do.
cry.
Honestly, I did a gig last night actually, and I remember afterwards, the compere was like saying like, oh, and this, and then they were like, and everyone feels destroyed after Maddie's set, and I was like, yeah, that's what I'm going for. Um, but like, I think having that kind of like that light and shade, but also like a lot of my songs are really sad, but it all comes from a place of like such like joy in the being able to tell them and joy in being in these spaces and being listened to and seeing people like me. Like it all comes from this like absolute like love of what I'm doing. And I think one of the things that I used to get told a lot when I started out was people being like, "Oh, I expected it to be a really sad gig, but you're having a really nice time." And I'm like, "Yeah, I am. I'm actually really enjoying myself." And I write a lot of sad songs, but I don't think I'm a super serious person. And so I think that was a really fun activity of being like, maybe I'm gonna do that like that fun chat, but in a song and kind of let that exist.
You do it so, so well. And even in stories I'd never tell, that you talk about a lot of emotionally difficult topics that many people can relate to and have experienced as well. So that's a beautiful thing. But also you do it in a very loving way and soft way. And I think that's as someone who can relate to some of the themes in that song, that it was really nice because it was like you show the complexities of difficulties. I think sometimes people are ironic being neurodivergent, some people see it as black and white, but like
Yeah.
those hard feelings are not always it was just bad. It's actually like there's this softness as well that goes
Yeah.
around it.
Yeah, 100%. I think, and thank you. That's really kind of you. But and I think that's my hope. I think there is a lot of nuance and there's so much complexity. I talk in stories and I'd never tell about being a survivor of gender-based violence, and like it's a really like challenging and complex thing to write about. But also it feels so important to me as a trans person to see other trans people talk about being survivors, especially like in a political climate where trans people are so often blamed for violence that we haven't enacted. And so it feels really important to share these songs and also like super vulnerable and super scary at times. I often think about again what I needed, and I like think about how impactful it would have been for me as a I don't know, as a 20-year-old, to see someone be like, I have lived this, it was really hard, but also I am still living, I'm still existing, and my life
Mm.
is good and beautiful. There's loads of beautiful things in my life now. So that's kind of the hope with those kind of songs. It's weird as an artist, and I don't know whether you ever get this where you're like singing something or performing something and you're like, oh, this is my real life, and now it is everyone knows. Like,
Mm.
and you chat to people afterwards and you're like, oh, they know these really kind of personal private things about me, but then also like the kindness I think as well that I get from other people, from audience members. There's something really safe about being like, oh, people know these things that I once thought would make no one want to talk to me or no one want to be my mate, and people are still kind of chatting to me like I'm a regular human being. I think that's a really like has been a really almost, I don't know what the word is, but like healing or therapeutic thing for me, is that like, oh yeah, and everyone still wants to be my mate, and that's nice.
You make it really safe for other people, and it's a wild concept, isn't it? We go through these things and then like blame ourselves when
Yeah.
actually it's just like, no, it's okay. You can talk about them.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
it's nice
definitely.
to see that. Talking about lovely things in your life, I have seen on your social media that you have a lovely pooch called
Yes,
Elsie.
she's called Elsie. I've got she's a French bulldog. So it was her first birthday last weekend. She's actually the light of my life. She's a baby. We got her as a baby and we're training her. She's working on being an assistance dog. At the moment, I can't lie, she's definitely more of a dog than an assistance dog. She's got a few skills that she's really good at, but mostly she just wants to like bark at the TV. But yeah, she's a legend. I love her so much.
I also used to have an assistance dog that was very much a dog at the same time.
Yeah, they're complex, aren't they? She's so good at some things. Me and my wife are both autistic. And when we were doing her training for being an assistance dog, we did loads of it outside and she wouldn't lie on the grass. We had to put a blanket down for her to lie on the grass, and we were like, oh, look, she's autistic like us. She doesn't like the sensory. So we sort of made a lot of jokes about that. But yeah, she's a legend.
What are some of the things that she does?
A big part of it is like I find social like conversations really hard. And so one of the great things about her is that at gigs, firstly, she does physical barrier. So she kind of walks around me so that I've got like space when I need it. But also she's like a great way to start and end conversations, which I find really helpful. She also does deep pressure therapy. So when I'm super overwhelmed, she puts all her body weight on me. And she's a bulldog, so she's got a lot of it, God love her. Which is really, really good.
My dog used to do the pressure therapy as well, and it's wild the difference. Like I used to have a lot of like panic attacks with like sensory overwhelm, and
Yeah.
like the click change as soon as this dog was on top of me was like
Yeah.
so different. Yeah.
Yeah, it's mad what a difference it makes. And like, I just love her. Like, I just feel like, and then her face is in my face, and I'm like, oh, it's gonna be fine, isn't it? Because Elsie's here and she's loving life and stuff. And it's also been really fun to kind of train her. And also, I think it's such a great way to think about your own access, having like a support animal, because it's like, oh, I need to work out what I need. And I really struggle to think about what I need because I'm like, oh, I'm just having a lovely time. But if it's like, oh, if I can train this and it's like a project, I'm much better at thinking about it. So that's been really cool as well to be like, oh, what would actually help?
Can I ask why? I was watching the video Fireworks on your website. Why is there a cat at the beginning of the video? And who is this cat? What is it, a famous cat? What's the story behind this?
She's just a cat. She's the cat of the producer. So she's Alex's cat, and Alex was producing the record. And we were about to start filming, and she was just sat where we were going to film, and we were like, well, I guess it's her time now, really, isn't it? Like you can't stop that, can you? Like she's I would rather watch her than me. I'm really like animal driven because I love animals because you don't have to talk to them, but they're just there and they're just hanging out with you. So I've got guinea pigs as well. They feature quite a lot on my social media because I did like a bit with my wife set me a goal where I kept not getting people to sign up to my mailing list, and I really struggle with like self-motivation stuff. And she was like, if you get 100 people to sign up to your mailing list, I'll take you to a guinea pig sanctuary. So I started telling people that in the gig, and it was a really nice like social, again like a social thing where people talked to me about the guinea pigs, and it was a hyper focus, so then I could talk about guinea pigs and I didn't feel as like awkward, and like I had like a script. And then I ended up being so hyper focused on guinea pigs that we ended up getting guinea pigs, so people ask about the guinea pigs quite a lot, and it's quite nice. But yeah, I just love like animals and like just weird little creatures. Just fun, isn't it?
What an awesome way to like motivate yourself as well. I've seen a lot of videos where they go, if we get 1 million likes, we'll go to the football or something like that. But guinea pig sanctuary, oh
Honestly,
yeah.
it was so good. It was the best day of my life. They were so cute. And they make really good noises. They like
Mm.
scream. Not scream, that's the wrong word. It's called like weaking, but it sounds like screaming. And they do it when they're excited. Like my guinea pigs are in my living room, but every time I open the fridge, they think they're getting vegetables and they all start weaking. It's the best thing in the world, honestly. They're legends.
I used to have, sadly he's passed now, but yeah, I had a guinea pig. I think we've talked about him before. I remember if I was like boiling water on the hob, he'd be like, as if, and I'm like, you can't eat the
It's
water.
not for you.
No.
Yeah, honestly. They're so demanding as well, aren't they? They really
Mhm.
like they think your life's all about them, which to be fair, it kind of is. I can't lie, but they
Which is
are.
nice, I think, to have that like you said, that focus on something else, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're so like chill because they're the kind of pets where like you can go through periods where you spend loads of time picking them up and cuddling them because they're prey animals. They don't really care. So like you can have as much interaction with them as you want. They really don't mind. They're happy either way.
We're gonna move from guinea pigs to a game.
Hooray! I love
Yay!
it.
This game is Croeso i Gymru, Welcome to Wales, where I introduce you, lovely Maddie, to the longest train station name in Wales. And trust me, no, barely anyone in Wales can say it either. And so I thought I would see if all the artists from each of the four nations could say it and how quickly they could say it. Do you feel up for the challenge?
I feel so up for the challenge. You know what? I'm dyslexic, and this feels like just looking at regular text, to be honest. This is impressive. This is really impressive.
Rappers tend to do really well with it.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah, we had on the station a rapper who said it in 2.5 seconds.
Oh, yeah, that's not going to be me. Are you going to tell me how it's actually said after I say it?
I can give it a go. I can
Okay.
try.
Okay,
I
cool.
might absolutely, blister it and ruin it for the Welsh community, but I was born in Germany, so that's my excuse.
Right, okay, okay. So you're like, that makes sense. Okay, right.
Three, two, one, go.
Lanfeb pygyrngylo gogyrchwynodrob will antya silagogogogcha.
Not bad. Not bad. Not quite 2.5 seconds,
No, I don't. I would be surprised.
but
I
you
think I got a lot of the letters though.
yeah, you did. You did really, really well.
Thank you so
Um,
much.
a lot of people tend to skip the middle, and you went all the way through. So I'm very impressed at your commitment.
Thank you.
And
Consistency.
Maddie, you did it in 18.63 seconds.
I'll take it, you know. Would it usually take that long?
I don't know. Maybe a
What's your
little.
average?
I'd say the average is around like five seconds.
Really nice.
But then, okay, right. I'll give it a go to
Okay.
sort of show. So it'd be Llanfair, Pwll Gwyn, Gwll Gogerys, o'r drobl o Santa Silio Gogogoch.
Wow.
Maddie, I'd love to know what's coming besides visiting Llanfair. What's upcoming next for you as a musician? What should people be looking out for, and where should they find out more about you?
In October, I'm doing a new tour and it's called the Songs and Stories Tour. And I'm so excited about it because it was part of a DYCP to kind of work out like how could I make gigs more accessible for me and more accessible for audiences. It's a gig, but as well as the gig, we've got these workbook scenes that kind of go along the gig with you. So they've got like questions and prompts related to the content in the songs, relating to like people's experiences and kind of like what might come up when you're listening to the songs and you can fill them out. And then at the end of the gig, it's kind of like this political idea about how a lot of the time for queer people and disabled people, we don't really our stories are kind of used without our consent and we kind of have our experiences. We get less choice about how people use our lives and our stories. So at the end of the gig, there's a post box and you can post it to me and I will take it. I'll take your zine and I'm going to use it for writing songs and I'm going to use it for more work. Or there's a shredder and you can ceremoniously shred your zine and make the choice that you don't need to share something if you don't want to. And then my guinea pigs are going to use it to wee on. So, full circle. We love a sustainability, or you can take it home and you can keep it because they're your stories. So I'm really, really excited, and we're going across the UK, and all the tickets are on my website. I'm so buzzing, and it's going to be really cool. So that's the main thing that I've got coming up, and that's in October.
Wow. And where can people check everything out and keep up to date with what you're doing?
Yeah, I've got a website. It's called maddie-morris-music.co.uk, and then I'm on all the social medias as Maddie Morris Music. So that's the best place. And I have a mailing list. I can't go to any more guinea pig sanctuaries from it, but I do have it. So that's also a place I sometimes tell people what's coming up.
Oh, amazing. What a cool concept as well. Um,
Thanks.
my last question for you, Maddie, is to a disabled, neurodivergent, or chronically ill artist that might be watching right now. What would be one piece of advice that you would give them?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think my advice would be to keep creating and to know that there is a niche. There will always be a niche that really, really wants to hear what you have to say. And that it can sometimes, like, I'd want to acknowledge the fact that it can sometimes feel quite isolating. But once you find that niche, you find those people, it's going to be the most best thing you've ever done. And so to stick with it, I think would be my first piece of advice. My second piece of advice would be to find funding, find support, find training, find mentoring. There are loads of really cool schemes that support neurodivergent and disabled, chronically ill musicians and artists. And so to be looking up for things, and also to have your own, to like try and find your own belief that actually you are worth that funding, you're worth that support, you're worth that mentoring, and that yeah, you deserve to be able to access cool things that will help you and your career flourish and grow. Thanks for having me.
Four Nations, Four Voices has been set up by Amplifying Accessibility and supported by Newport City Radio. You can watch and listen to the full episode again and again on Amplifying Accessibility's YouTube channel.